absolutely. So, want to do a quick lightning round with all of our panelists. And the lightning round is this. If you could shift anything you wanted to about your grants in the blink of an eye, without fear of pushback, whiplash, legal constraints, what is the one thing that you think would make the greatest difference in equitable grant making in your state? So I want to do a quick tour. I know it's cruel and unusual punishment to force you to pick just one thing, but let's try. Pick one thing that you think would have the greatest impact. Jane, I'm going to put you on the hot seat. Would you start us out?
Sure. Sure. And I feel as if the pandemic has actually given us the permission opportunity to change things in the blink of an eye. And I hope that we will be able to continue. And that's some of that flexibility. If I had to pick one thing, I think it would be to continue to include more general operating support across all of our funding. So even if it's a project, that there is support to sustain the artist or the organization as well.
More GOS, amen, amen. Katherin.
I'm really thinking about policy and system and structure. And for me, that is going to the council and how the council gets appointed, and making sure that the council is directly, as folks have been saying, of, by, for community.
You're not starting small, are you? Very influential idea, absolutely. Ayanna, what would be one thing?
Oh my gosh, it is cruel and unusual punishment to think of just one, because I agree with everything that's already been said. But I would like to understand. I would like to eliminate the application process. I would love to go to a process where organizations could just share with us what they need, maybe in an interview or something like that. I think the application process is a huge barrier. An online application process is a huge barrier. And I know there's another model. I just haven't figured it out yet for a state arts organization, but I hope we can get there someday.
Yeah, I think that would be a really popular idea with many applicants. Ken, what do you think?
Ayanna, I am right with you. My thought about this is to simplify. You know, I think we forget sometimes that our job is to distribute funding, not to create hurdles to funding. Our job is to offer professional development and technical assistance to empower creatives toward a more sustainable future. So yes, you know, I keep asking myself, how can we serve constituents and have the greatest impact with the least amount of burden to those we're serving? So I couldn't agree more.
Love that, Ken. Love that. So thank you all for these really amazing and inspirational ideas. We've talked about some very important equity strategies today, but of course, this is just the tip of the iceberg. Every grant a state arts agency or a regional arts organization makes is the product of 100 different formal and informal, structured and organic choices. And each one of those choices is an opportunity to be more inclusive. And NASAA has a brand new resource to help you seize those moments. It's called Equity Choice Points, and it is a toolkit that invites us to interrogate our funding systems from start to finish, from the very beginning, about how we are making contact with constituents and how eligibility parameters are set, to the middle of the process and how things are adjudicated, how award amounts are determined, and how we can lay the groundwork for systems and change. Now, every state is different, as you have heard today, and every state's approach to equity is going to be unique. So in that spirit, the Equity Choice Points Toolkit includes examples from more than a dozen state arts agencies, including the great work of California and NEFA and Maryland that you have heard about today. And fair warning, the guide also pokes some sacred cows along the way. It raises the unintended consequences of long-standing traditions. Things like definitions of excellence. There's been a robust conversation about excellence in the chat column today, and it tackles that. It looks at formula funding and the biases that are harbored in those systems, matching requirements, just to name a few. So the guide is not for the faint of spirit, but hopefully it is a useful catalyst to your thinking and to your action. Premier access to this guide is your reward for tuning in today. NASA made it available early just for you guys, and we won't be formally announcing it until next week. So enjoy your preview. I want to close, I think, with two anecdotes that offer some food for thought for equity work for our field. One is about sandwiches, and the other is about sidewalks. A few years back, Voulay from nonprofit AF used an analogy that really stuck with me. Imagine that you have 3 kids and 3 sandwiches. And it seems fair to give each kid a sandwich, right? But what if one of the kids had not eaten for a few days? And another kid just came from a banquet or a birthday party or something and is stuffed. Equity is about recognizing those circumstances and helping the kid who is hungry to get food. And maybe that means the other kid gets less, or maybe even none. And Voulay calls this the courage to be unfair. I've worked in this state arts agency field for almost 30 years. And it seems to me like we are very, very invested in the same sandwich for everyone mentality in our field. But maybe this moment in America can be a catalyst to rethink our support for communities that are chronically undernourished. Maybe we can use what MLK called the fierce urgency of now to create conditions where everybody can thrive through the arts. And it's that idea of everybody that brings me to my second story, which is about sidewalks. Back in the late, and I promise this will be relevant, back in the late 60s or early 70s, a few cities started to modify sidewalks to install ramps to help people with wheelchairs. It caused a lot of havoc, ripping up the streets and stuff like that. But the end result, 50 years later, is that curb cuts don't just help people with disabilities. They make life better for postal workers, for parents pushing babies in strollers, for people with luggage, for people with stiff knees, and everyone else. Curb cuts prove that equity does not have to be a zero-sum game. Angela Glover Blackwell puts this beautifully. She writes, when we create the circumstances that allow people who have been left behind to participate more fully in society, we all win. And I love that. And I think it's very true. And I think it's the public sector's job. So with that, I'd like to thank Ayanna, Katherin, Jane, and Ken for being with us today and sharing their experience and their wisdom and their hope. You are my Jedi heroes. The Force is truly strong within you. And I really admire the open hearts and open ears and spirit of learning and experimentation that you all are bringing to this work. Thanks also to everyone else for joining in today. NASA is cheering you on. We are here to be a resource. None of us are in this alone, and I really couldn't ask for better traveling companions along the way. So that's a wrap for today's session. Thanks again for being part of us, and be well.